Welcome to Know What I Mean. My name's George.
My name's Oscar. We were literally just talking about, after finishing this episode, how great it's been to be able to get into a bit more flow with recording. And that really came through, I think, in this episode. It felt very spontaneous, and like there was this energy, and we were just able to kind of follow our interests and what inspired us within the conversation. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's some really important things in this, like some very fundamental concepts that can really have like an impact on how fulfilling your life is. And it's not like some little trick, but it's more like just the process of going through this and understanding this has definitely had a big impact on my life, to be not grasping as much for things and really appreciating them more. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it.
Enjoy.
So the quote for this week is: enjoy things for what they are without idolizing them as a necessary part of everyday life. And this is from an article by Peter Adeney, who goes by Mr Money Moustache. And he's got a blog which is kind of about saving money, financial advice, but also there's a lot of philosophical things that are kind of built into that. The essence of it really is about using your money for things that actually make you happy, like really understanding yourself and what purchases are actually going to increase your happiness and what things aren't. And this quote first made me think of when I visited my mate in Istanbul, and he's got a lot of money, and he's got this incredible party house that he's got in Istanbul, which has got like 4 floors, this roof garden. There's this DJ booth. There's one floor that's essentially like a club. So it's got the DJ booth. It's got all these crazy lights, like proper flashing lights and strobes and everything. There's weird statues. There's like a giant cactus, like a plastic cactus that's like as high as the ceiling. There's this chandelier of candles. There's this giant crystal which is worth like thousands of pounds. Like it's just this insane, really trippy environment. And I remember being there, and like it was an incredible week there, just partying the whole time. But after a while, and by the time I was leaving, I was kind of like, that was crazy, but that was fucking wild. Like, I don't actually want to live like that. And the thing that's really being talked about in the quote is how the best thing and the most enjoyment comes at the start. So, like, the best part of a party house is, those first couple of days where you've got the novelty of it and it's this amazing new thing. And you're like, oh my God, I've got a insane sound system literally in the living room. And it's a place where you don't really have to worry about the neighbors. You can just, in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, you can have it full volume, literally like a club sound system. And it's something that is so cool in the moment. And even then I was kind of, if I'm honest, getting like a little bit envious and thinking like, man, this would be so cool if I could just have a room like this where I can just, get whatever I want in it, whatever crazy shit. I can play music as loud as I like and do all of these things. But I realized that this was obviously not something that I would actually enjoy. It was kind of my reaction to it was that, oh, I want to have that as well. But when I actually started to go through it and think what it would entail to have a house like this, and I just realized that the main part of the enjoyment is the novelty of it. So it's great to have a friend like that. So, I can visit him and just have some like a wild weekend or a wild week. But that it's great that I can come home and have like a more chill life for the majority of it, because that makes me really appreciate the craziness of it. And, that's what the quote is about, is enjoying the thing for what it is without thinking that, okay, now I need to have this as well. Now I need to have this every day. And it's really just that understanding which sometimes isn't our first reaction. Often the first reaction is to be like, oh, I want this too. But just to really take perspective on it.
What do you actually think would happen if you were given those circumstances all the time? Because obviously you were talking in a way, like in theory, like, oh, but I wouldn't really want it all the time. But like, why wouldn't you want it all the time? Like, what do you imagine your reaction would actually be over a period of time?
So there's a few aspects to it. One is the fact that, my friend was very connected with the club scene and a lot of the DJs and people there who would come over. So there would be that level of managing that. It's not like if you have somewhere like that, you instantly have a party every night. You need to have and maintain lots of connections and stuff that comes along with it. So I was just getting the benefits of it. It's the same as if you go to a commercial club. Like there's so much behind the scenes work that's been done with the promotion and the DJ and hiring people and paying for things and all these extra things that you don't really see, all the boring parts of laying out the venue and stuff. And you as a consumer just get to enjoy the cream of the crop and the best part of it. So it would mean that I would have to deal with those things of like managing that and getting all the connections and maintaining all of that. Also, his room was at the top and it literally, the whole building was like so high. It took maybe a couple minutes to go from like the front door to the bedroom. If you got down there and you'd forgot your jacket and you had to go up, like there'd be a lot of things that'd be inconvenient about it. It's not to say that I wouldn't enjoy having that and it'd be nice to have a big house. It's just that the novelty of it made it more enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes me think of, there's this thing that I've seen online like a number of times that frustrates me, which is when people point at celebrities or people with a lot of money and say, you should just be giving that away. That's an obscene amount of money. No one needs that amount of money. Like it's stupid. You just should be giving it all away. And there's not an account for that everything is relative. Like the amount of times that I say the words everything is relative to myself is a lot. I probably say that at least once a day in some form. And this is a great example of it because it is literally relative. It's like when I went traveling to Southeast Asia, I was just like one of the cliche backpackers, right? We don't have to work out there. We just come along to a different economy where people generally have less money and we're able to live a lot higher standard. The amount of money that I have in comparison to the average person in Thailand is obscene, right? Just based on the difference in the economy and what is normal for how we live here, that we expect our houses to be sound, that we have parents or friends that can support us if need be, all of these things, that we have education, all of these things that actually we take for granted that are simply not the case for a huge amount of the world. So it's like I don't give away all the money other than the bare necessities I need to stay alive, because I'm used to a certain level where I live, as anyone is in the world. So it's one of those things where it's just, I guess I've just found it frustrating when people assume that they are not the same as the celebrity or in a certain way to someone else. You know, there's literally always going to be people who have less and have more. And I think it is different to a degree, but by and large, we just assume that what we have is just the norm.
Yeah. And we assume that we'll be happier if we go up and sadder if we go down.
Yeah.
But we see like where we are as neutral, I suppose.
Yeah. And it just isn't. It shocks me when people talk about being on 30 grand and being like, that's okay. You know, it's not that much money and I could really do with being on 50 or whatever it might be. Right. And you're like, there's so much like expendable income if you're earning 30 grand. Like that's a lot of money, right? You'll be able to do a lot of things with that amount of money. And it's because I don't have that amount of money that I'm thinking that is so, like, what do you even do with that amount of money? But it's like we do actually live a very luxurious lifestyle, like many people in our society, compared to like the vast amount of humans on this planet and throughout human history. It's crazy how different it is. Anyway, that's a slight like offshoot, but I can't remember why I initially said that comment, but I do feel like it's relevant.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing actually from Mr Money Moustache, from a talk he did that's really good, where he's kind of talking about the age that people retire, and this same thing of how people just expand what they buy based on what they earn. And has this thing of, say there's a guy earning 40,000 a year and a guy earning 400,000 a year, that if they both save the same amount, say they both save 10%, so one of them saving 4,000 a year, the other's saving 40,000, then if they want to keep the same standard of living that they have, and they're both saving 10%, they're both going to retire at the same age, because the person who's saving 4 grand is, only needs to make it up to 40K, say, for it to support a year of their lifestyle. Whereas the person earning 400,000 but saving 40,000, they still need to save for the same amount of years to get that amount. And that's really I guess the point of the blog, is actually thinking about what are the things that are going to actually bring you happiness, and find out really objectively where that level is, and then just don't buy shit above that level.
Yeah.
It's tempting as your pay increases to be like, oh, let me get a bit of that, let me get a bit of that. But the examples that he uses in this article, which I think are great, is this, he talks about being a king for a day, which is like just living. Say if you visit your friend, they've got an amazing boat, you travel on that, you go to a restaurant, you do all these things that seem amazing, and you're doing them completely for free, and you're just doing them with your friend. And say you get a boat, the best experience on the boat is the first day. That's like the most exciting one, because that's all where all the novelty is. Whereas all of the subsequent days are probably not going to be as good. And the problem is that people get a free ride on someone's boat. They've had like the very best day or the very best experience that you can have from that item, and they've not even paid for it. They've just got it because it's their friend. And then a lot of people in that situation might leave it thinking like, oh man, I wish I had a boat. And like you've just like completely beaten the system. Like you've just got the best thing for no cost, like the best day for no cost. And then you're going away thinking that you're lacking because you don't physically own that thing. When if you owned it, the first day on that boat would be great, and then it would slowly or fairly quickly go down after that.
I wanted to take it a little bit deeper. There was certain structure that I was thinking in regards to Buddhism with this. So in Buddhism, there's a lot of talk about impermanence and non-attachment. And I really, when I was reflecting on this quote, that's what came up for me, was just that, like what you've just been talking about, you want to hold on to that experience. You want it to be permanent. There's a belief that if you were to own the thing, if you were to have it somehow in writing that this is your possession and your thing, this is your boat, that you'll be able to harness and maintain the level of pleasure indefinitely, as long as you own that thing. Like that's kind of a capitalist ideal or an illusion that we have, and it's it's very fundamental to being a human being in it's craving. So there's an idea that you will actually be able to hold on to things that are by nature impermanent, that do change. So I think a lot of people, when they think of impermanence, I guess because we are conditioned to believe that we can have permanent pleasure from consumer items, the response might be, well, and also, reflecting on death and stuff, it can be quite scary too, so impermanence gets a bit of a bad rep. You can think of it as a bit negative, as a negative things things are impermanent. You can notice how the most beautiful moments, those moments in life where you're really like, this is this is it. This is what it's about. This is real life.
Mm-hmm.
Are often very, very delicate and very obviously impermanent moments.
Mm.
For example, cherry tree blossom, like around the corner from my house, me and Imi went for a walk in the park, and this tree was just blooming. It was incredible, completely white and like full blooming. And you are so aware of how quickly this is going to go.
Mm. Mm.
You're just so aware of that, right? There's no point of trying to grasp a load of these petals and try and hold onto them and put them in some sealed container and just look at them in that way. You appreciate the delicacy and the beauty because it reminds you that things are fragile. You know, there's this fragility, and that is beautiful. I find that something I really, really like is when light comes through a woods and it will sit on a leaf or a bit of a tree in a particular way. You know, maybe it's like dusk, and it's such a crisp, beautiful moment that is so quickly gone. Or a sunset, something like that. It's just ungraspable by nature, right? And I think often it is moments like that we really appreciate beauty and we really appreciate life. Same as being with certain friends, and you know, there's just this laughter and there's just this beautiful moment that's happening. And obviously me and everyone, you know, we've been at parties or whatever and been having these kinds of moments, and then our clinging mind will come in and think, there must be a way of maintaining this. I want to keep this going. I want to keep on partying and keep on enjoying myself, keep on being with these people, keep on drinking, doing whatever. Like, that is possible. And you try and it just falls apart. It just doesn't work that way. As soon as you start trying to clamp onto it, it starts falling. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The crux of what I felt this is about is enjoy things as they are, without grasping, without trying to maintain and hold on to the experience. So in the way that he talks about it in regards to financially, I think actually the thing about the examples that you gave and the examples that Peter has given before is that there's this illusion that you're going to be able to keep and maintain a good experience if you buy it. If you consume this thing, somehow that will work and you'll be able to keep it. So enjoy things as they are, because you're not going to be able to hold on to them if you try and consume this thing. It just doesn't work that way. Just enjoy it as it is. The enjoyableness, the enjoyment is that you don't own it, is that it is impermanent and it's relative and it's a novelty. And I think, well, I don't know why I've got this image in my head, but I always have the image of a monk in my head. And I think it was just, I heard a quote somewhere and I've got this association. But in regards to impermanence, this monk sort of says something along the lines of that I can enjoy things much more fully knowing they are impermanent, because they can arise in my experience. I can just enjoy them. And when it's time for them to leave, I don't cling. I don't hold on to it. It drifts through my experience and I can enjoy this beauty. And then when it's time to go, then it's time to go, because it feels horrible to be trying to desperately hold on to something that it's impossible to hold on to. It doesn't work.
And that can end up taking away from it, because as soon as you're in that moment, I think a party is a great example of if you're in this beautiful moment and then you're thinking, fuck, I need to keep this going. We know where that ends. And it doesn't end with more happiness. I'll tell you that. It just ends up with desperately trying to continue the party and things just deteriorating as you're clutching at these phantoms of happiness.
And we do it in more subtle ways. I mean, clinging is so fundamental to being a human. So we're doing it all the time. You know, we're trying to maintain, you know, that next episode of something on Netflix, I'll just watch one more. Like, I'll just be able to and then you watch 1, 2, 3, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and your enjoyment is diminishing. You're getting more tired. It's getting a kind of weirder point in the night, and you're just feeling more exhausted, and you're like, this just isn't what it, or just drinking or whatever it might be. It's happening all the time. It's this illusion that we can hold on to things that we just can't.
Yeah. And I think the wisdom is really the understanding of this, because the natural inclination is to cling, but it's seeing through that and understanding those moments where clinging is literally going to do nothing. It's only going to worsen your experience. As I was researching this, I found this incredible study which was done about enjoyment of TV programs. And they did the study and they found that people enjoy TV programs more when they have commercials in, which is so wild, because anyone asked if you want to watch something with or without commercials, you're going to say, well, yeah, obviously I want to watch it without any ads. It's just annoying to have the ads. But people rated their enjoyment of the show much higher if they had the adverts. You know, what they were saying is that's the anticipation is what builds it up. It makes it more special, because you have halfway through the show, you have this moment where you're like, oh man, what happens next? I want to know. And it makes you hungry. The same way with a meal. If you've just got food in front of you the whole time, you know, the most amazing food you can possibly imagine. I mean, this is such a cliche, but really think about it and how it applies to other areas in more subtle ways. Just imagine, you know, you've got all the perfect food in front of you all the time. That is not nearly as nice as working hard and then just having a lovely, big, satisfying meal when you're really hungry. They just don't compare. But the natural inclination would be, no, I'll stay here with the buffet and you go out and do the hard work and have a big portion of chips at the end. I've always been really interested in contradictions, and it's a massive contradiction where the thing that you want to do is not what's going to make you happy. Even though it feels like it's the thing that's going to make you happy, it feels like it's what you want to do. It's just not what you want. I think it's the same with Netflix. Like you were saying, when you're binging a show, you just kind of want to keep it going. But if it was back in the days where, you know, a show was once per week, then you would appreciate it more. You would have much more enjoyment from that show, watching it over a month rather than watching 4 episodes that end up at like 3 a.m. and you're watching the show. It's going to be so much more enjoyable watching it once a week.
It's no doubt. I'm really interested in this area of craving and aversion in regards to this, really, because as you said, I think we have an idea in our minds about what we want, but it's not our direct experience of enjoying life really isn't anything to do with that. So craving's used a lot in Buddhism. I think in popular culture, it's used almost like something positive, but craving in the way of, I am not enough. I am incomplete. This thing will make me complete. That's what craving is. And it's so interesting to explore it. I did a 9-day retreat, which was really in this area of exploring craving and aversion, or pulling and pushing, or desire and fear. And the interesting thing about craving is we have such positive associations with it in our culture in a way. But yeah, the crux of it is basically that I am in a constant state of lack. I just am not enough. And this thing is supposed to make me enough. And the thing about that is it just isn't true. It's not that it's because it's based on something that is incorrect, basically. Yeah, you're asking the wrong question, or I don't know. It doesn't actually work, because right from the beginning of I am not enough and this will make me enough is a lie, that I am not enough, that there is something fundamentally incomplete with this experience right now. And that isn't true, because it can be so easy, definitely for me, to get into shoulds in this area. I shouldn't be craving, I shouldn't want to eat McDonald's or watch another Netflix episode or whatever. And it becomes a bit of a, like, you know, a naughty boy kind of, like, you're doing something wrong. I think I can really slip into that when it becomes just this kind of funny concept of I shouldn't have desire. But the reality is it's just based on a mistake that you make in believing that it is possible to be incomplete. In this moment right now, as you're listening, fundamentally, this moment is as complete as any other moment in your life. There's just sense experience. There's sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. The body's here. It's just this sense experience that's happening. It's just as complete. Without the concepts, it's just as complete as any other moment in your entire life. And yet, I can guarantee on some subtle level, there is desire and fear. There is wanting to be elsewhere in some part of you and wanting something that's here to stop in some part of you. And it's just so funny. I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole with that, but I do find it really
important
in that it's based on just a simple misunderstanding of how complete things really are already.
Yeah. And that's the thing, when you're building things on top of a false presupposition, then they're bound to crumble. It's like you're doing a math problem and you made a mistake in the very first sum, and now you're using that number to do all these other calculations, which are completely redundant because you made an error on step one. It's a lifelong process of bringing yourself back to that step one of realizing that you are complete as you are now, regardless of all the great things that you're planning to do in your future. Right now is the present, and it used to be what you're experiencing now used to be in your concept of the future, of where you would be in the future. And it's just about practicing the appreciation of this moment, which is kind of what it all always comes back to, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's so important to recognize that, like, fear and desire, like the illusion that a future moment will complete you, that is as deeply embedded in being alive as anything, because, you know, it propels us forward. Like that illusion gets us to do things. It gets us moving. So it's not, you know, it's really not a case of making it into another stick to hit yourself with. You know what I mean? It's basically it's like the most difficult thing you're to do ever, in a way, is to be working with these things that are so fundamental. And yet, in an absolute sense, you know, you are complete. You're as complete as you ever be. If you put the thoughts down, you're complete as, you know, complete as you can ever be. And God, it's so nice to even talk about it, because it's just like, oh, thank God for that. You know, like this moment is as full as and rich as it will ever be. And just to bring it back again to the quote. So in the quote it says, without idolizing them as a necessary part of everyday life, without idolizing, without having this illusion that you're going to be able to hold on to particular experiences by consuming, without saying, oh, I've had this experience, this lovely day, I've had this lovely experience, and then projecting and saying, but now I'm incomplete now, and I just need to maintain this experience to be complete. I'll just need to indefinitely be surrounded by laughing, fun people that appreciate me indefinitely. I'll just have that indefinitely, and then I'll be complete. I'll always be complete. And so the illusion is in there, you know, in the idealizing them as being possible to hold on to when they're just not.
Yeah, that really is the key, is that it's not even possible. You can't actually make them a part of everyday life, even with unlimited resources, so that you could have all these amazing things in your life every day. Then all of these amazing days would lose their importance, because there was no novelty or no anticipation for an exciting holiday in the future. That excitement and that novelty once you arrive on holiday is what makes it so incredible. You know, if you were a skydiver, you know, I've been skydiving and it was like one of the most mind-blowing things ever. But just think about the people who that's their job, they're an instructor, and they're like falling at like 160 miles an hour, and it's just like, oh yeah, another day at the office. Like whatever you do, whatever level of stimulation, crazy party or beautiful landscape, whatever it is you like, or even a mixture of that, even like traveling from one amazing place to another amazing place, just like an orgy of every possible stimulation of your senses that you can imagine, that too would begin to be completely empty. So it's not that you shouldn't idolize it as a part of everyday life because that's bad, because that's a weak thing to do, or something that's not a great ideal. It's that seeing that that's not even possible. It's not even an option. Whatever resource you have, whatever, it's not even on the table. So don't think of it as on the table, because it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's not that you ought to not do that.
Yeah.
Even to save money.
Yeah.
You know, I don't do this because it will cost you lots of money. It's simply that you will not fulfill that desire. It's not going to be possible to do that. And bringing it back to like, because I've keep on getting pictures of like yachts and stuff in my mind now, and these like amazing holidays and stuff. But I think like bringing it back down to kind of my lived experience, I've got this idea that when I stop working a 9 to 5, that my enjoyment of work will be at the level it is currently when I'm not working my 9 to 5. So when I've got my free day, I don't work on Fridays, and then on Fridays I do my own personal projects and things like that. I have an idea that Friday will just be extended throughout my whole week as soon as I stop working 9 to 5s. That's the illusion that I've got in my head currently, is that I can just extend that out, and then I'll just be having a sick time all the time. And the reality is it's just not going to work like that, because I get a lot of enjoyment from that Friday because of the relativity between that and working a very like straightforward, fairly mundane 9 to 5 job. It's the difference there and the contrast there that makes that Friday so exceptional. That's not to say that I aspire to stay in this job for that reason, but I also have to be aware that it's not going to be what I'm thinking it's going to be, because I'll just get used to, and there's problems with me not having the structure that I currently have with my 9 to 5. So yeah, I feel like that's quite a good one in regards to this. It's not going to work out the way that I'm hoping it will, basically. So I can't take it too seriously. Yeah, basically an idea. I can't think this will save me, this is going to make me happy. If I just, as soon as I be able to stop working in this way and work in this way, then that will be the point when I can really start living life and really start enjoying things. It's like, no.
Yeah, that seems like a good moment to transition to next week's quote. Although first, big up to everyone who's listening, and yeah, we really appreciate it. We have so much fun doing this podcast, and I feel that even now we're getting more and more comfortable with it and enjoying ourselves even more. And I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope if you've got this far in the episode, I really hope you're enjoying it. Because otherwise, what are you doing with your life? But yeah, if this episode made you think of anyone, we would love it if you would share it with someone, because that's kind of the way that we want to grow and spread these conversations that, you know, we hope people enjoy and find interesting. And yeah, if you want to support the podcast, we've got a link to coffee if you want to buy us a coffee. And I think that's everything, isn't it? Before we go to your And now to Oscar. I'm so stoked I remembered all that stuff, even though it's like 2 things. Anyway,
it's taken months.
Yeah. All right, Oscar, what's the quote for next week?
I'm gonna have to stand up to go and get it.
All right.
Just settled.
Oh, the anticipation is going to make me appreciate this quote so much. Maybe
Yeah.
wait another 5 minutes.
Yeah. Or I'll just read out the whole quote book and see if you're as enjoy if you enjoy it as much then.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, that's a great quote. Why don't you read the rest of the book?
Yeah.
It turns into like going. This episode is like a fucking 10-hour audiobook starting from a random point in the
And each quote you enjoy as
we're never going to end this episode. We just want to keep it going because I've really enjoyed it.
Okay, so this is a quote by Jack Cornfield, a Buddhist teacher. Each act of generosity is a recognition of our interdependence, an expression of our Buddha nature.
It's a nice one.
If you have any thoughts about this quote that I've just read out, then you can get in touch with us via Instagram, 𝗚𝗲𝗿.podcast. We'll also have a link to our email address in the description for this episode.
Sweet.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good week. Peace.